Good morning. This is a large venti, as they call it, Java chip Frappuccino from Starbucks. I used to drink these all the time, and I came to China in 2012 on June 1st. I flew from Tampa, Florida, connecting flight in New York City, and then on to Shanghai. In the airport in New York, I bought one, and it was over $5, and I couldn't believe the price, but I was in New York, and I was in the airport. I fly to China, I go to my hotel, and there's a Starbucks right next door to my hotel. I go inside and I ordered the exact same thing, and it was 35 kwai, 35 renminbi. I asked my friend who was with me, I said, is the exchange rate 6-1? And he says, yeah. I said, this thing is $6? I just paid $5 in New York and I hated myself. It's more expensive here. And they told me that Starbucks is considered luxury, kind of, in China. And the Starbucks was full. Almost all the Starbucks in China are full. I was so surprised at this that when I set up a new Twitter account a few months after that, and all the good usernames were taken, I made my handle 35 kwai. I didn't like my username then, and I hate it now, but I don't know how to change it. Anyway, you might imagine that it wasn't long before the Chinese got curious about just how much it costs to brew a cup of coffee compared to what Starbucks was getting for selling it. Here we have two charts which reflect the boom in China's coffee market and how that is tipping over into global supply chains. The Chinese still do not drink much coffee compared to consumers everywhere else. It's rare to find someone my age who drinks any coffee ever, even not a single time. But the law of large numbers says that in a country of over 1 billion people, even a slight change in consumer buying habits have big consequences. And now those are being felt across global coffee markets. The story of Chinese coffee is also fascinating from a supply chain perspective and illustrates their strategies here, which are so familiar to how Chinese firms operate globally to ensure they're well supplied in their factory sectors and in their consumer markets. The growth has happened very suddenly and very recently. Luckin is the biggest coffee chain here, and 2018 was just 6 years ago. And all that coffee needs to come from somewhere. China is a tea drinking country, so they don't grow much coffee domestically yet. So that's priority one. Get some coffee farms going in China. They're still just getting started. In 2023, Chinese coffee production doesn't really even register at all. 0.06%, 130,000 bags, and almost all of that production comes from Yunnan province, which is where the premium teas also tend to be grown. The climate is ideal. The production is still very low but rising fast, and that's a key feature of China's supply chain strategy, dramatically scale up domestic production. At the same time, get busy forming partnerships and sign exclusive supply contracts with producers around the world. Chinese executives headed to Brazil, where previously they were the 20th ranked buyer of its coffee beans. In just 2 years, China was the 6th biggest buyer. But even that news is old. Luckin Coffee signed contracts with Brazilian suppliers totaling $500 million for 120,000 tons. Brazil's Minister of Agriculture is thrilled. 3 years ago, Brazil sold $80 million worth of coffee to China. Last year was $280 million. This year, just a single Chinese company took down another $500 million. That headline was from June 2024. This is a new one from November. Just 5 months later, and Luckin is back and wants to buy even more. Now they're buying 240,000 tons for a minimum of $1.38 billion, and it may go as high as $2.5 billion. So consider the prices paid too. In June, Luckin locked in 120,000 tons for $500 million. Now they're doubling the order, but the price is a lot higher now. China is willing to pay top dollar in advance to secure supplies. And this is typical. Chinese buyers come into your company or your mine, or they show up at your farm and they say, give us the number. Tell us your price where we, China, has the right of first refusal for everything coming out of the ground or out of your fields. Chinese executives are not buying contracts on commodity exchanges in Chicago or in London. They go directly to the people doing the work, they shake hands, they sign a contract. Prices are already at all-time highs for coffee on global exchanges. These deals that China has just done are naturally going to strain our own markets as well. But yet again, this is another example of enormous trade volumes that will not be done through our exchanges or through our banks because it's bilateral. We will see big price moves in our own markets, though, as these supply chains get shifted and Brazil producers figure they will make more money working with China. Consider the question asked here in this headline. Why are Brazil's wealthy suddenly seeing coffee plantations as a great investment? Coffee is not new, but coffee in China is new. Historically, coffee farms in Brazil are not profitable. Most farmers earn less than $1 per pound. But China has scrambled up all this math. Chinese companies often handle all the logistics, the inspection, even the packaging. They can also lock in a price, and suppliers know that that is the price floor, so they can make long-term production plans. Whereas dealing with our commodities exchanges, the production plans cannot last much longer than a single harvest. Chinese buyers take all that uncertainty away. So Brazilian producers, in this case, of coffee, in this case, can make long-term plans for hiring, new production, and capital improvements. In just the 13 years that I've been here, I've seen this personally in 3 consumer discretionary markets: milk, beef, and coffee. As Chinese consumers had more money to spend, they wanted more dairy, more beef, and now more coffee. And they were starting from a very low point domestically to supply the new Chinese demand. On the milk, Chinese overseas companies showed up at dairy farms around the world and said, give me a price for 5 years. And companies here in China got busy raising more dairy cows. Beef, same thing. Coffee, now, same thing. It's the same playbook. Global prices may go up, may go down, and China doesn't care. Their coffee shops, their supermarkets, their factories are always going to be supplied. This leads to stronger trade relationships outside China with their suppliers. That's the concern expressed here. Remember, the United States is a much bigger consumer of coffee than China is, and probably will be forever. But that's not important. China has decided to drink a lot more coffee, and that's enough to blow up markets for everyone else. This is Hong Kong, the Polytechnic University. Be good.
Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Father, thank you for this precious brother who